The fact is, I think if you look at the most recent election, the biggest dividing line was not race and it wasn't gender, despite what some pollsters were predicting. It was education.
Hello and welcome to the Anne Phelan Scoop.
My name is Anne McElhenney.
And I'm Phelan McElhere.
And we're in California. And,
Yes.
and I'm dressed like I'm in Colorado, by the way.
Because it's cold here.
It is very cold here. And we do have a winter in
Los Angeles.
In Southern California, we actually even have a winter.
Yes.
And in other
What a
news,
weekend we've had.
We've had a very traumatic weekend. So Top Cat, and I know we haven't talked about Top Cat or Scaredy Cat recently. Top Cat, as you know, our cats are indoor-outdoor cats and really have been living a lot outdoors recently. And
Due to the fact that we've kind of abandoned them for stretches at a time, I think.
I would need to be careful, Phil, here, because Peter are going to end up, coming with a squad car to pick
Yes.
us up or pick up the cats or something to save them from us. Anyway, Top Cat picked up an injury. Here's the injury. If any of you out there have anything to say about the injury, we would really love to hear from you.
Yes.
But we have fabulous neighbours who came in and dealt with the cat.
And we put stuff on it to stop it getting infected. I have to clarify, we didn't abandon the cats. We have cat sitters. We travel a lot for work. We were in New York for almost 2 months for the play, and then we were in Ireland for a while. So, I mean, they've been seeing a lot less of us, and I suppose they find love in a foreign climate, But they've come back a lot, but now it was quite traumatic for
Yes.
Top to arrive in...
with this serious injury.
Yes.
Moving on, Phil, I think that's enough of that.
Oh, you also had you bought an interesting jacket at the weekend. Tell us about that. On
Bizarrely-
Abbot Kinney.
Bizarrely, Abbot Kinney, one of the most expensive places to buy anything in the world, but there were some vendors on the street this weekend, and I bought a very nice jacket.
Let's see a picture of it there.
We'll show a picture of it. And it's vegan, which is, of course, marvellous.
Vegan leather.
Vegan leather, by the way,
Vegan leather.
But that's going to bring up a vegan issue
Well,
later.
what does vegan leather mean?
So it's made from oil.
That's correct.
It's made from oil.
It's
Yeah.
plastic, vegan leather.
Yeah.
And
And the very people, by the way, who have such a problem with the oil and gas business are the same people who are wearing vegan jackets.
Yes.
It's just interesting to know.
So,
but
but
I
that-
think most of them, like most people who have issues with the oil and gas business, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, don't know anything about where the energy that powers all the lovely things in their lives comes from.
which brings us on to today's show. We bring you the latest scoop, or the inside scoop actually, on Trump's latest cabinet picks. Our personal connection to one of the choices. We've stayed in his house. We know him well and his family.
Met his lovely children.
And he has views on vegan jackets also. We'll
he
be
does.
playing that for you. And we have a perspective on RFK that you won't hear anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. And Trump has changed everything, including who the working class vote for. We look at why it happened and ask, is it a temporary phenomenon or a permanent realignment? We speak to someone who spent years studying this very phenomenon.
Yes. And is California going red, or is it just blushing? Boom, boom.
Look at you, Phil, with the
Yes.
funny puns.
Yes. We look at some surprising results from the election in our locale and how to destroy a movie in 600 days. Hollywood just can't help itself and is going broke because it's woke. We bring you the latest drama from the Snow White production. It's a mess. It's like a mess. It's suicide rather than it's not being killed. Hollywood is not being killed by streaming. Hollywood is committing suicide.
Mhm.
But some journalists, actually some parts of big media though, seem to be learning a lesson. We bring you the latest on that. Now, some parts of the media are melting down, but other parts are seeing the writing on the wall, trying to pivot. It's probably too late, but we bring you some interesting developments on that.
But before we get into any of all of that, we wanted to bring you some news of dear friends of ours who are in trouble lately. As many of you know, our dear friend Dennis Prager took a very, very bad fall. I've spoken to his wife, and I would just say to everyone, please keep him in your prayers. It's going to be a long haul, but there are some positive developments, and we're not going to get into the details of that. But honestly, just keep him in your prayers because Dennis is a dear friend of ours. We have very regular Shabbat meals with him, with very good friends of ours in Santa Monica, and we really want everyone to pray and think about Dennis. It's very tough.
It's a serious industry, but actually, there's
positive.
There's room for optimism.
Yes.
But it was from a dark place. So please keep him in your prayers and think about him
And the other friend of ours,
his family.
Exactly. And the other friend of ours who's having a very hard time is Mark Steyn, who has done more, by the way, for free speech than anyone on the planet, bar perhaps Elon Musk.
Well, I would say argue more than for free speech than Elon Musk. So right now, the UK. By the way, Mark Steyn, he got the legislation. He got anti-free speech legislation overturned in Canada. He fought for a decade in Washington in a free speech case against Michael Mann, which you can hear that case reenacted in our podcast Climate Change on Trial, wherever you get your podcast. It's really worth listening to. It's an amazing. We're so honored to be doing that diary of free speech, that history as it was being made. But right now, the UK regulator, I mean, Mark has been fighting free speech in multiple jurisdictions.
Yes.
So right now, the UK media regulator, Ofcom, is trying to ruin him by lawfare. You might remember Mark hosted shows on GB News. And this is concerning two shows in 2022 when he called for a royal commission to investigate a disturbing trend in vaccine damage numbers. Right? It's called journalism. I think people are being damaged by the COVID vaccine. I think we should have a royal commission to investigate.
It's what Mark Steyn said.
And the second show was in October when he did an interview with Naomi Wolf, who's
Dr. Naomi Wolf.
Yes, who's a historian, who I don't agree with everything she says either. But the interview was about the Pfizer papers that had just been revealed, and the damage that Pfizer knew their vaccine was doing. And by the way, and the idea that this is not worth every vaccine damages people. Every vaccine on the planet has a small group of people that react badly to. But perhaps an experimental vaccine, a new vaccine, might damage more people. Perfectly fair to ask these questions. However, not in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So Ofcom took the position that when Ofcom investigated the complaint, they said, we don't have to investigate whether COVID-19 vaccine was safe or effective. They said it's just harmful to raise these questions. So, they were investigating, whether it would be harmful to ask questions. That's where you are in the UK.
And they never interviewed or sought information from Mark Steyn or from Dr. Wolf.
Yes.
In the course of their investigation into these two episodes of the GB News show.
And what happened was, what looks like it happened, according to Mark, was GB News and Ofcom did a deal where Mark would be found guilty, and GB News, if they apologised and did mea culpas, they would get no fine.
And fired Mark.
So, so they found the harm, and then their judgment. By the way, they're judge, jury, and executioner in this. There's no independent. They don't give it off to an independent commission. They are the judge, jury, and executioner. They found the harm was caused by raising the questions. So Mark took a judicial review of this, and Justice Fairby, he went through the official government data that Mark presented and confirmed, with the agreement of the Ofcom lawyer, that what Mark reported about the numbers was true. But in the UK, truth has no defence. So therefore, they found him guilty. And they even said, oh, well, actually, the problem was was on balance. He didn't quote the government disclaimer. But on the screen was the government disclaimer at all times whilst Mark was speaking. I don't think he just said it, but it was on the screen. So even though Mark told the truth can still be harmful according to the UK regulator. Of course, it can be harmful to the official narrative. He lost his legal challenge to Ofcom, and now this government entity, which is not short of money, is now suing him for their legal costs, which they calculated, I think it was one day of a hearing, they calculated to be £144,000 sterling, which I think is like something like $170,000 or something ridiculous like that. Maybe $200,000.
More like $200,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Mark is appealing the costs and has asked for a breakdown of the costs, which the judge agreed with because he was very interested how they came with this. But in the meantime, he's been forced to pay £50,000, which is $64,000. So he set up a Give, Send, Go, a fundraiser, and really, really needs your help. I think as we're speaking now, he's getting close to the total. But
you can still give.
I just spoke to his people actually, and they're saying, look, it looks like they're going to ask for a lot more than the 50. This is just a holding pattern, and also it will fund them challenging the costs. Yes. It's hilarious. They're going to incur more legal costs to challenge the costs. So please keep going, giving more than the 64,000 target. So the Give, Send, Go, we're putting the campaign details up on screen how to give, or you can just Google Mark Steyn Give, Send, Go. We are also going to put it in the show notes in YouTube. Don't forget to put in comments if you do donate. If you have donated, I know many of our listeners, because we sent out an email, have already donated. Go into the comments in YouTube and say, I donated and I was proud to stand for free speech and Mark Steyn. I know sometimes we ask for money and we always need money to keep our show on the road, but we are proud to ask for Mark Steyn because no one has fought harder for you for the right for free speech. So please give what you can, give slightly more than you can. Go to Mark Steyn, Give, Send, Go. The link is
it's on the show notes.
We'll also send it out in our regular email. So open the email and click on that. We also know, and so
Trump has made a selection for Energy Secretary, and it's Chris Wright, who we just happen to know. Yes. Not only do we know, we've stayed in his house, we've met his wife, his lovely, very lovely wife, and very lovely children, very interesting and intelligent people. And what's really interesting about this, and we've had Robert Bryce on the show a number of times, who's an energy expert. He's written a brilliant Substack on this, and by the way, I'll put that up in the show notes. But one of the things that Robert Bryce said in the show notes, in the Substack, which I think is really, really shocking, is the US, prepare yourselves, the US has never had a Secretary of Energy who has actually drilled an oil well, built a nuclear power plant, or dug coal out of the ground. Indeed, actual expertise in the energy business appears to be grounds for disqualification.
Can I just tell you, that shows you what a swamp DC is.
Yeah.
What a liberal swamp it is, a leftist swamp.
Somewhere in one of the lines, as I said, I'll link to Robert's very good Substack. But in part of Robert's Substack, he mentions that previously there was a guy, and I haven't got it in front of me right now, who was a driller, had some experience in drilling, who had the job of Energy Secretary, and that guy was previously. His drilling expertise was in dentistry, yes. Which I don't think really speaks an awful lot to the energy story. And by the way, I think the thing about energy is it's not complicated, but there's a lot to know. Mm-hmm. And it's really, for us, I think, reading this and learning this information that Chris Wright now is going to be the Energy Secretary, this is good. By the way, this is going to sound very overblown, but this is actually great for humanity, because this guy is... He's really good.
He's a big shale energy.
He's a big science guy. Yes. He's very scientific. He's very factually based. He's one of the pioneers. I mean, this is what Trump said when he gave him the job. Chris was one of the pioneers who helped launch the American shale revolution that fueled American energy independence and transformed the global energy markets and geopolitics. One of the things that's interesting about one of the things that that Robert Bryce calls Chris, and I love this, is that he's an unapologetic energy humanist.
What does that mean?
I'm going to get into that in a moment. And he's an unapologetic advocate for energy realism. So one of the things that his company is called Liberty Energy, and Liberty, instead of publishing a bland ESG report every year, what Liberty do is they publish a report called Bettering Human Lives. Mm-hmm. And the latest edition, which I'll put a link up. Actually, we'll find it and put a link up in the show notes now. But, to make things easier for you, I'm going to break this down. And a number of different blogs have done that recently. Mm-hmm. But this is so interesting. The Bettering Human Lives document itself is 180 pages long.
Yeah.
But here's the points that matter. And this is what Chris Wright thinks about energy. This is the guy now who's going to be in charge. His number one point is that energy is essential to life and the world needs more of it. Thank you, Chris. Number 2, the modern world is powered by and made of hydrocarbons. Number 3, hydrocarbons are essential to improving the wealth, health, and life opportunities for the less energized 7 billion people who aspire to be among the world's lucky 1 billion. 4, hydrocarbons supply more than 80% of global energy and thousands of critical materials and products. We'll come back to that. The American shale revolution transformed energy markets, energy security, and geopolitics. Global demand for oil, natural gas, and coal are at an all-time record level and rising. No energy transition has begun. I mean, this is the guy. Number 7, modern alternatives like solar and wind provide only a part of electricity demand and do not replace the most critical uses of hydrocarbons. Energy-dense, reliable nuclear could be more impactful. So he's he's very much in favour of nuclear.
By the way, which goes against his commercial interests.
Of course.
You know, this is the thing, the environmental groups, you know, that he's a fossil fuel, you know, and he's going to be pushing his own self-interest. He actually, in the opening of his annual report, is pushing a rival energy source.
Correct. Number 8, making energy more expensive or unreliable compromises people, national security, and the environment. Number 9, I think these 10 points are worth taking time for. Number 9, climate change is a global challenge, but it is far from the world's greatest threat to human life. He also does not make the equation that all climate change is caused by humans. But number 10, I love this one. Number 10, zero energy poverty by 2050 is a superior goal compared to net zero 2050.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting, one other thing I want to say, one story I love about Chris Wright is, so in the past, so Chris Wright, you know, I don't know, thousands of people work for him, and he had commissioned North Face to make jackets for his workers, and they did make those jackets with his logo on it, and they made them, all the guys wore them and all that. He then discovered a couple of years later, or soon afterwards, that a rival shale company, I'm going to say the name wrong, Innovix, I think they're called. They thought it was a great idea, and they commissioned from North Face the same thing. If you go on the North Face website, you can go with your company, and you can get North Face to make you 1,000 jackets with the company logo on. They advertise that, they want you to do that. But anyway, they decided that they objected to this other shale company, this oil and gas company, having the logo on. So the first thing that Chris Wright did, which this will show you the kind of them. So this is making me very excited about the future. All his workers put masking tape over the North Face logo, continued to wear the jackets. But that wasn't enough for them. So what they then did was, in Denver, where I think North Face has their headquarters, they put up huge billboards all over Denver calling out North Face for their hypocrisy. Because, of course, North Face are so stupid, God help us, that they don't even realise that the very product that they make is 1,000 million % dependent on oil. Yeah. So those jackets that you wear, those what do you call those fleece jackets? Yeah. That's made from oil. A bit like the jacket I bought on Abbott Kinney the other day, jacket. Which looks great, by the way, as you see. Another photograph of me looking at how very attractive. Made it was, by the way, very funny. It was $35. He wouldn't take a credit card, and the only cash that we had was $32. So I got it for $32. Not many people can say they bought anything on Abbott Kinney for $32, including shots of turmeric. Yes. But anyway, that's another story for another day.
Air One.
But anyway, Chris Wright, he's an incredibly good pick. We couldn't be happier about this. This is good for humanity. I think that's actually the thing to understand, because this man understands how important energy is for people to thrive.
And speaking of Trump's cabinet picks, we need to talk about Robert, Anne. We need to talk about Robert.
That's RFK to you.
That's RFK. So we have followed Mr. Kennedy for years, because the same reason, by the way, that we know Chris Wright. We did a documentary with Fracking, Frack Nation. We did a documentary about climate change called Not Evil, Just Wrong. He was the legal counsel and basically the face of the River Keepers Alliance, which have opposed fracking all over Pennsylvania and were responsible basically for getting fracking banned along the Delaware River Basin and in New York.
This would be something that we actually know an awful lot about, and
Yes.
something that gives us pause with Robert F. Kennedy
because
of science.
Yes, the science is quite clear, and it's not like
it's not open. Yeah, it's not open for discussion.
Well, I mean, it's not even under research. Does seed oil, right? You know this thing about seed oil.
We don't know anything about that.
Well, no, nobody knows anything about that, right?
Right.
There hasn't been enough studies done on it. Let's be honest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all these new things. Does this dye cause that? These are all questions. I suspect they don't cause you harm, but these are valid, I suppose, questions to ask nowadays. But you can actually take a water sample. It's very simple to do, and get it tested. And when the EPA did that, they found that fracking does not contaminate water. There may have been some little temporary damage to water for a day or two while they were drilling, mud would settle, etc. But there's no poisoning of the water.
And as far as we know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has not done a mea culpa on that. Now, you can correct us, by the way, if we're wrong about that. But until he does do a mea culpa on that, it's not good. It's not good. No, because basically, the follow the science crowd, in this particular case where there is an abundance of, beyond an abundance, by the way, of information, because fracking happens all over the United States.
Let's show.
Basically, almost every oil and gas, production site, almost every one of them is a fracked site. There are millions of fracked wells across the United States. So there's no shortage of data. So I think we'd love to hear from RFK on the fracking. Has he changed his mind? Has he learned?
Let's show a little clip actually from our documentary about how people reacted when they were told that their water was fine. This is the EPA that they called in to examine their water. What was Julie Soutner trying to hide? Why would she not release the findings of the EPA's water testing? A source told me that 3 senior EPA officials had given her the results and that the meeting was filmed. Through a Freedom of Information request, I managed to get hold of the tape. It showed the EPA telling the Southners that their water was not contaminated. Their reaction to this good news was rather strange.
Oh my gosh, I just can't believe you people. With everybody.
Yes,
she's got a problem.
Look at.
No, I'm
right here.
I'm not sitting anywhere. I'm done with this. I am.
Right here.
You can finish this. I'm done. I'm getting myself too upset for this shit.
No, this is bull crap, man. I'm sick and tired of this. What happened to you people? Really?
Listen.
You guys aren't the same as you were 2 months ago, 3 months ago. You think I made this stuff up? This. You're out of here?
Yeah, I'm not gonna. This is getting. You want to sit down and talk rationally to me?
How can I talk rationally with you when you guys won't even listen to anything we say?
I'm listening to you.
You're saying my water's fine and we can drink it.
We're telling you we tested your water. At this point in time, we found no contaminants in it.
So you see, some people are against fracking for ideological reasons. Some people are against fracking for gut reasons, and some people are against fracking for financial reasons. And some people think it's a big payday soon in oil and gas company. So he's now a vaccine skeptic. He is a
I think he was always a vaccine skeptic in my memory, and then obviously
he's now a COVID vaccine skeptic.
Yes.
He's a big food skeptic, a big pharma skeptic. So what should we think about this? Should we trust the scientists or the activists? Now, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, the choice would have been, pretty automatic. Trust the data and the scientists. But then we had things like climate change, which is complete corruption of science, corruption of data. And then we had the COVID corruption. I probably don't need... I could spend several programs talking about the COVID corruption. So we have quite rightly lost faith in science and the experts. Then we had doctors, American Pediatric Association. There are 72 genders. You can give puberty blockers to children. Complete madness.
Well, we have the medical establishment in the United States allowing doctors all over the United States and other parts of the world, but let's just talk about America for right now, allowing doctors, lots and lots of doctors, including this awful woman in Florida, this Irish woman, Sive Gallagher, cutting off the healthy breasts of young girls, of children, by the way, of children who wouldn't be allowed vote, and also, basically castrating boys.
Yeah.
So that's happening all over, science has taken a hammering of late.
So we've lost faith.
It should have taken a hammering for this, because You don't need to be a scientist to realize that this is savagery. And there's history here of this type of thing happening before, of the experts telling us things and asking us to not believe our own eyes, for example. Yes. Eugenics was incredible. I know I mention eugenics quite often on this program, but I actually think it's really worth mentioning again. Every last clever person on the planet Earth agreed that eugenics was a great idea. They got huge numbers of people. All the institutions agreed on it. Eugenics, so the Nazi final solution, they learnt it from the Americans.
Yes.
We have to all live with that. So we should be very skeptical. And
my favorite skeptical story is the ulcer.
Oh, yeah.
Those of you who are old enough to remember the 80s, everyone had an ulcer and it was caused by stress. One scientist said, I think it's caused by bacteria. He went and looked at autopsies of stomachs that had been removed because they were so riddled with ulcers, and he could see bacteria there. He showed it to his fellow scientists. They looked and said, "There's no bacteria." It's there. I mean, the crap that he put up with trying to overturn the medical establishment, and now no one has ulcers because it's bacteria, and it can be treated with antibiotics.
And he got a Nobel Prize for that discovery.
Yes.
Okay,
so moving on. I'm fascinated with the shift that's going on among the working class in America. I mean, there's a huge shift going on. And so much so that it's in changing the entire outcome of our elections. Trump won 55% of voters without a college degree, compared to about 40% who chose Harris. That's a big decline. Biden won 47%, Trump won 51%. And
I think it's interesting to dig into this because you're listening to that and you're thinking, well, the difference between what Trump had before and now is 4%. What's that? It's huge.
Yes. Because
the population is huge. The population of voters without a college degree is the majority of people.
And
so a 4% shift is massive.
You're not supposed to say this, but they're white. The massive population is white. This is why this obsession, by the way, it's worth talking about the Hispanic shift, but the people who make the difference are the white working class.
Because it's such a big number.
Also, they're more swingy, right? They will change their vote depending on policies and connection with the candidate. So there's this massive bunch of people out there who can get behind the GOP and ensure a permanent majority. Are we courageous enough to go and meet them halfway? Let's see. But let's talk to someone who has been studying this situation
and talking to these very people
for years now. Let's go over and look at the interview we did before we came on air with Patrick Brown. Patrick Brown is a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. He served as a senior policy advisor to the Joint Economic Committee in Congress. And one of the reasons we want him on today is because he edited a series on working class voices for the American Compass. He's been widely published in outlets like the New York Times, National Review, Washington Post, and frequently speaks on issues concerning the working class and talks about pro-family economic policy. So, Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you.
Good to have you.
So first things first then, Patrick, you claim that Donald Trump won with a surprising coalition, the working class. Don't they usually vote for the Democrats? And why didn't they this time? And how long has this been going on?
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but there were signs all along, starting in 2016 and in 2020 as well, a gradual shift along educational lines. And this is big because it used to be American politics was heavily divided by race. Oftentimes that was, stretching back to the founding and through on, right? And we know that racism was one of, slavery was an original sin that was carried and perpetuated on. The fact that we've been able to move past that now in the last couple of elections, seeing a tremendous movement of working class voters, primarily, or as I should say, especially Hispanic voters from the left to the right, attracted by President Trump and his more working class style, a policy agenda that's not as beholden to some of the orthodoxies of prior generations of Republican policymaking. The fact is, I think if you look at the most recent election, the biggest dividing line was not race and it wasn't gender, despite what some pollsters were predicting. It was education. It was whether you have a college degree or not. And I think that's going to be the defining characteristic of the American electorate for a while here.
Wow.
But obviously, the Hispanic shift was interesting. But the shift that moves elections, and this is what the consultant class don't like to admit, and I've suspicions why they don't like to admit it. But the big, if you can shift the white working class into your corner, it's basically an electoral win every time, isn't it?
Yeah, there's just frankly more Americans without a college degree than there are with one, right? So if you're going to place your bets, you want to be on the side of, blue collar, working class America. Now, the risk there is a risk.
Well, no, sorry, Patrick.
20...
Sorry to interrupt. The point I was making was the white working class. I know we're not supposed to. I know you said we've moved beyond race, but that's isn't that the significant switch of the last 20 years? The Rust Belt was solidly Democrat. Pennsylvania was the great white whale of the GOP.
The blue wall.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what happened?
No. I mean, so it's the white working class is a significant shift, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And again, we saw that starting to happen in 2016. And the risk is in the midterm elections, non-college educated voters don't turn out at the same rates as college educated ones. And so that's part of the reason why Republicans didn't do as well in 2018 as they were expecting, and in 2022. But that's a powerful presidential coalition because they do come out in 2024 and 2016. And there was obviously a lot going on with COVID in 2020 that kind of makes it an anomaly, but the trends are very clear.
So it's interesting. I read some of your writings, very, very interesting. And you said one of the things I thought I really liked was that you talked about the kind of consultant class in Washington D.C. who will present this working class they bring this exhibit basically along, and that person becomes this kind of poster child for everything that that they're trying to, whatever narrative they're trying to push at the time. What's your, so you've had a much deeper dig into who these people are and what they care about. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So this, just to be clear, this is the American Compass Project, which is going out and actually getting the American working class to write about their lives. So tell us what they said, but was it easy to get people to tell the truth about their lives?
Well, in some respects, yes, but in some respects, no. And I think one key difference between the sort of, I guess consultant class, the DC sort of bubble that a lot of people who work on public policy get trapped in, is they see the world around them as a political problem, right? Everything boils down to what knobs and levers of the government can I turn to get my desired outcome. And this is true both on the left and sometimes on the right as well. And I think what I was most struck by when I was going, virtually around the country, this is during COVID, soliciting people's first-person essays about the challenges they're facing, is a lot of people just don't think about their lives that way. They shouldn't. It's a good thing that they don't. But translating the fact that, my commute is terrible, or I'm paying too much for childcare, or, it feels harder and harder to have a family no matter what the GDP numbers look like. Those don't always translate into a neat and tidy policy agenda, but it's that sense of something's gone wrong in this country and people aren't listening to what I'm saying. I think that's a powerful driver of populism and what Trump himself is able to tap into in a way that the left just does not have the language nor sometimes the interest in trying to do so.
Yeah.
What did he say, by the way, that so attracted these voters?
I mean, it depends who you talk to, right? But I think there's clearly a strain of voters who love the fact that he is not cowed by political correctness and that he is willing to stick his finger in the eye of anybody, right? And sometimes it's people on his own team. Oftentimes it's the media. He's saying things that people, can't say, and he can get away with it because of his just electric connection with his base. I think a big question going forward is, does the Republican Party have anybody waiting in the wings who can carry on that relationship? I'm not sure. It'll be very interesting 4 years to see what that future looks like.
Very good. Very good point to
you. So what did you find when people were allowed to speak? Actually, one thing that really struck me, I just wanted to say this, was how hard, I noticed you talked about how hard it was because, a lot of the structures have gone from working class areas. You know, there's not a local newspaper anymore. The church isn't as strong as it was. You know, that it's just people are leading fractured lives now. But when you were able to catch the people, when you were able to to pin people down and say, tell us about your problems and your concerns and your hopes, what did they say?
Yeah, I think that's a really key point. That again, sometimes, and this is a big divide, right? Culturally, people who went to college are much more likely to get married these days than people who didn't. They're more likely to attend church now than people who didn't go to college. There is a fracturing of America along this divide that is not healthy, right? There used to be a lot more intermingling. You know, the boss and the factory worker would go to the same church or go to the same Toastmasters or Kiwanis club or whatever. That doesn't exist anymore, and so we get the bubble effect of the elites in DC and New York and other places, and then the flip side of the coin is this sort of hunkering down sense of, you know, feeling alienated or isolated or fractured, as you say. I think that is one theme that you hear throughout. Now, again, I don't want to make it sound like there's just bleak misery all around America. People are living rich lives, but the sense that, especially in the places that get all the attention, right? The Rust Belt, parts of the Midwest, where the factories left and what replaced them was strip malls with payday lending, that kind of thing. It just feels like something went wrong somewhere along the way. We made a bad bargain and we never really asked for this. I think that's a big part of the reason why the sort of populist move and the GOP has come to fruition.
That reminds me of the movie Bridesmaids, you know, which is not known for its political commentary, but
I don't know where this is going. Go on, Phil.
You'll get it. You'll get it.
Go on.
So when the Kirsten Wiig character, who funny enough, after the crash, set up a cupcake shop, because that's what all middle class people do, is they set up cupcake shops, even though they have no experience in baking or running a business. It failed. But anyway, the people came over and she was trying to impress the new friend, or show that she was smarter, and so she wanted to take her the group to this ethnic restaurant
very ethnic
in a strip mall, and the catty new friend said, the catty posh new friend says, "Oh, look, and we can get a check cashed at the same time whilst we're eating," right? And it was a very good
snobby point.
Her cupcake business failed, right? But there was the same day lending business was thriving.
Right beside the ethnic restaurant that had them all very unwell for a very long time.
That gave them food poisoning.
I have a question. I mean, just another group that had an interesting shift in this election were the Teamsters. So it's a slightly different group. I just thought that the numbers were so extraordinary. The shift, and I just want to read those numbers because I just think they're extraordinary, that the Teamsters favoured Trump 60% to Harris's 34%. Previously, Trump, by the way, had gotten 36% from the Teamsters to Biden's 44%. What happened there?
Well, I think my initial read is that it's a cultural disconnect between California, no offense, style progressivism that is embodied in someone like Kamala Harris, sort of wine track, as they say in political consulting.
What?
Versus
hang on, slow back. Hang on, wine. Sorry, what's that now? Wine what?
You mentioned wine? Wine track?
Well, compared to the wine track to the beer track, as Joe Biden might represent more.
What's a track?
The Union Hall, right? The blue collar man of the people taking Amtrak and that sort of thing. That was something that Joe Biden was born and raised in, back in the 70s when he first entered politics. And Harris couldn't speak that language. I think that is, and also I'll say, Trump also went out and spoke to the Teamsters, and he went and held a rally in the Bronx of all places, right? He went out to these places that Republicans aren't often found. And I think just going there and showing up and saying, I care about the problems you're facing. I understand that you don't feel like you have a voice and that you've been forgotten about in DC, that can have a powerful impact. And I think the Teamsters are an example of that.
I want to make a correction there to Patrick, saying about basically, that, Kamala Harris wasn't able to speak that language. I would actually make a correction there and say I don't think she was able to speak any language, by the way, particularly not English. I think she was having a major challenge with all language. By the way, my God, what about word salad was too kind.
She reminded me of a child who had just really discovered essay writing. And I mean, and it's a problem in journalism. It's a problem. It's a problem in young journalists, and it's a problem in young people who've discovered essay writing. They think more words make it better. As I think it was Mark Twain said,
if I had more time, it would have been shorter.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I had more time to write this, it would have been a lot shorter.
Right.
Yeah. And Kamala, she'd never given interviews. She'd never had tough questions. She'd never had to fight for a position, and she was unable to be articulate.
Right. Well, and she also was trying to conceal an agenda which was clearly out of step with where the American people were. And so when you don't feel confident in an answer, what do? You ramble and you try to, do a little shuffle step to hide the fact that you're arguing for things that actually the American people have spoken, as we know, in the last election, don't actually want. And so there was clearly a lack of confidence in what progressivism stood for. And you're starting to see this soul searching take place on corners of the left, where they're saying, how did we come so far where we become so disconnected with Americans without a college degree? And they think that we're pushing transgender surgeries for federal inmates. And of course, the secret is that they were, right? And
they were.
Something that she spoke about with the ACLU. So it's not just messaging, it's substance too.
Yes.
So so going forward now that they've been elected, now that they've won, what specific policies would you like to see them implement so that they can actually keep this wonderful wave of new support?
Yeah, it's going to be a really tricky tightrope to walk because on the one hand, I think there is, again, more focus on how can we be delivering for workers and for families and less for corporate, profits and multinational corporations. I think that is all to the good. The challenge is going to be for the Republican Party, what type of working class agenda? Take something like sports gambling, right? Which is something that we've seen that sweep across the country. And in some respects, it's a very limited government. Hey, why should the government tell you what you can and can't spend your money on? On the other hand, we know that whenever we see a state legalize sports gambling, it has a negative effect, especially on young men. Their net worth goes down. They have more rates of binge drinking, this sort of thing. And there's a question of, well, what kind of agenda are we going to advance? Is it just, we're going to sort of speak populist, but deliver limited government, strict limited government approaches? Or are we going to actually be thinking about what is conducive to long-term flourishing? Are we going to make it easier to start a family? Are we going to expand something like the child tax credit, which helps get a load off parents' backs? I think that's going to be a big question for the Republican coalition going forward. And I'm not quite sure I have confidence to know which version is going to win out in the end.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, and it's kind of out of their hands, but maybe it's not. They need to just make it cheaper to build houses too and buy houses. I mean, and they also need to reduce the tax burden.
And they need to do something about energy prices, which we'll be talking to somebody else in our podcast later about that. But it's the energy question could be something that could really appeal to people when they start noticing that their electricity is much cheaper.
But I think the big expense in people's in life is a house. And so much of America now, but it's the cities that are controlled by Democrats, and it's all zoning and it's all regulation, a lot of it, and it's out of the Republicans' hands. So, Trump needs to put the pressure on these cities.
I would love to see that. I think you can't be pro-family if you're not pro-housing. And I think if you want to unleash an aspect of American prosperity, this is actually something that came out of California when there's good research that shows when they imposed these growth controls and environmental restrictions, incumbent homeowners felt richer because there's less competition now. You can sell your house at a higher rate. But if you're trying to buy a home, it's death, right? And I'm sure you know people out there who have been in this situation. This is not just limited to California anymore. It's spreading across the country, and it leads to lower fertility rates. People feel poor. They're not having kids. They're not getting married in the first place. I would love to see a Trump administration focus on unleashing our housing supply. That would be a huge step forward.
It's shocking. It's shocking. Like there's so much of America that's unaffordable now. Like so much. You know, Tennessee. You know, a lot of Florida. A lot, you know, parts of Texas, right? Parts of Texas. You know, I mean, there's so much land in Texas, but all the cities that are controlled by Democrats are now becoming increasingly unaffordable.
Maybe Elon Musk will do something about that, particularly with the regulation issue, because that's obviously something that he's going to target.
Yeah, could very well be. It's always been a political challenge for Republicans because of the dynamics you're talking about, suburbs and versus cities and all that sort of thing. But I agree, it would be great to see Republicans at the national level leading with a movement to reduce some of these regulations, let developers know what they know how to do, let the market clear. I think that could be a huge win for every part of the country, but especially these places where housing is just eye-bleedingly expensive.
Okay, well, Patrick, thank you very much for coming on the show. Very interesting. We could talk to you all day. Where can people find you on social media? Where can they find you on
all the socials?
On all the socials and more of
or on social media.
Yes.
I'm on the X Twitter platform at PTB Wrights, and you can also follow my work and the work of other scholars at www.eppc.org.
That's PT Wrights, PTB Wrights?
PTB, my initials, Wrights, WRITES.
Okay.
Perfect.
Because I'm writing, and that's where I'm from.
Thank you,
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Anytime. Thank you, guys.
Bye. Well, time will tell.
Yes.
And it'll be, and what's interesting with that is whether or not those voters, that vital shift of those 4% of these non-college educated, will continue to, will it grow? Will that number grow? And will it stay the same based on what happens in the next 4 years?
Yeah.
Will Trump keep them? Anyway,
will the GOP, will the
Yes.
consultant class and the GOP establishment actually want them? I think a lot of them are embarrassed by the white working class. They'd much rather get the black vote, because that shows how nice they are. Or the Hispanic vote, that shows how progressive they are. And they all want to be invited to the right dinner parties in DC. So, California is going red. We're not talking about the wine. Boom, boom.
Oh, that's very funny. Yeah, we're going to look.
Will thought it was funny. Our producer
For those of you who are watching on YouTube, we're putting up these two maps here, showing what's happened electorally in California from 2020 to 24. So this is only in 4 years. A quite extraordinary change in the color of the map. So huge swaths of the country, of this state, which were very comfortably blue, have just turned red.
Yes.
It's quite exceptional.
Even in those coastal areas where they're still blue, they all saw swings in the presidential election towards Trump. And by the way, if ever there was a wasted vote, it was voting for Trump in California on the election day. So the fact that people actually went out and voted for Trump on election day, that means there's an actual huger amount of Trump supporters there. I mean, so why did this happen? Well, look,
we live here, so we
here.
know a thing or two. And by the way, exactly where we live. So we live in Venice, and even just right in our very, very small neighborhood.
And we live in the quietest part of Venice.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good, for a while. So literally on the canals, very recently, 2 women were attacked. One of them is dead. And they were attacked at a normal time of the day, walking dogs. The other woman, I think, is in a very, very bad shape.
Both raped and attacked.
Both raped and attacked, and one of them is dead. The other thing that happened, again,
closer,
just right, even closer to our house, is the library, is the Venice Library. Middle of the day, people walking along there were held up at gunpoint and robbed. So that experience is becoming very general.
But also, you can't leave a bicycle out. You can leave nothing out in your front yard. It will be stolen.
Because we have a Nest camera at our house, we've seen there's one individual we've at least captured on camera trying to open up the car doors. I don't think he got into our car, but he got into the neighbour's car. And it's very terrifying in the middle of the night to suddenly see this appearing on the camera.
And there's encampments everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, our biggest hope is Gavin Newsom thinks he's going to be president in 2028. And since that...
So we all think that that's a great idea. We should really push that idea, because hopefully the more he thinks that that's possible, the more possibility we have of having our neighbourhood cleaned up and the beaches not be,
He's suddenly
scary.
discovered that homelessness encampments are unacceptable and has started cleaning them up. Long may this continue, but it's a very tough problem to get rid of. Let's talk more about Hollywood, actually, and California. Snow White actress Rachel Zegler. I mean, she's
the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. Anyway, she's insufferable.
Yeah.
But she went on this long rant about President Trump.
It's not the first thing she said, by the way, but her most recent sin basically is that she's come out, and basically said, after the election, basically said, Trump supporters and Trump voters and Trump himself, may you never know peace. So, that's just, 71 million people. Is that the number that we're
But that's a
talking about?
threat, really. That's a saying, we're going to make your life, make you feel unsafe. Anyway, she gave a half-hearted apology because she was told to by Disney, I suppose.
Said, I let my emotions get the best of me.
So apparently Disney have spent 280 million, did you say? They got 50 million back in
Yeah, because they shot some of it in England and they got some kind of tax rebate. But basically they've spent about 250 million. They're going to have to spend another 100 million on advertising, on marketing at least. And it looks like, and the movie's not going to come out, by the way, until March of 2025.
I want to just give you a little history of Ziegler, what she's done in the past, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason we're going to give you this history, because a friend of ours is caught up in this. So she's the face of Snow White, right? Of course, because you can't have Snow White. By the way, I think she's Hispanic or something. Snow White can't be white anymore.
Of course not. What's wrong with you?
God, who is the fairest of them all? Well, not Snow White, because she's Hispanic. I mean, that's a line, mirror, mirror on the wall.
I know, Philip. Of course, we know. Yes, of the beloved fairy tale.
Well, she's not that fair-skinned. Anyway, so she's been basically dissing the Snow White audience, like the Trump supporters, and the story of Snow White for years now. She continually dissed Snow White as being patriarchal, and outdated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power. And she said Snow White, that her version of Snow White was politically correct because it needed that. Because that's really going to get the audiences flocking to the malls.
Yes.
She said the character in her show won't be dreaming about true love, but becoming the leader she knows she can be. How did that work out, by the way, for the Star Wars franchise? How did that work out for Indiana Jones franchise? How to destroy
how did it work? How did it work out for Ghostbusters franchise?
Yes, all these franchises have been destroyed.
Who've tried to do that, it's completely destroyed the franchise.
Yes. She also slammed the Prince Charming from the original Disney cartoon as being, quote, creepy and, quote, a stalker. Even joking that the new film would cut his role altogether because this version of Snow White was not.
She doesn't need to be saved by the prince, basically. Yeah. Oh my God! But they've had unbelievable trouble with this movie already. I mean, one of the things that they did, which was really hilarious, was because obviously Snow White, the original title of the story was Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, and they decided, we can't have seven dwarfs. So what they decided was they would replace the seven dwarfs with seven. What did they call them? Magical people or something.
Yes.
And those magical people were literally a who's who of every ethnic group that they could think of. And I don't even know.
Genders.
And genders and all. But in Iger then came along.
There was such an outrage. They released a photo of them, and it was such an outrage that they
re-replaced the dwarfs with CGI dwarfs.
And that's why the budget has gone through the roof. And I think they've taken out a lot of the feminist stuff. They've had to reshoot an awful lot of it.
And the movie's not going to come out, by the way, until March 2025.
It was supposed to come out years ago, but she keeps putting her foot in it. So, but if you want to do yourself a favour and have a good laugh, go and watch the trailer.
So, and the reason I would ask people to go and look at the trailer on
YouTube,
and literally don't bother watching the trailer, but go and look at where. So you can put it in, type it into your browser. Disney's Snow White teaser trailer. And the reason I'm asking you to do that is because 10 million people have watched the trailer, have gone there and watched the trailer, and you can all go there and watch the trailer. But what's then happened is there's more than 70,000 comments, and people are commenting up until right now, particularly because of this recent spate spate of attacks on
It's
the,
great
on the
fun.
Trump voters. But basically, it's really fun to read the comments because the comments are like, I mean, basically everyone. So I think 70,000 people, something like 97,000 people, like almost 100,000 people liked the trailer. Everyone else
2 million.
disliked.
2 million.
Yeah, about 2 million people have actually said they disliked the trailer, and it's all up there for you to see. But you can read the comments, and actually, what's really funny is that the people who are commenting, and they're all becoming this like community and saying, "I'm so glad I came here because this is such a great," and they're all bonding over their. They're so tired of this. And who does Disney think is going to go to this movie? I can tell you one thing: 71 million people are not going to be going.
Yeah. So more fallout, more madness. Rachel was having a bit of a meltdown. The Guardian newspaper now, which is a
by the way, before we move on, from that, I just wanted to mention one other thing about this Zegler and this woman. It's our dear friend Gina Carano. So Gina Carano, who was in our film My Son Hunter, was cancelled by Disney. By the way,
by Disney. She was in The Mandalorian.
So she tweeted a few things out, and she got cancelled. And here's what she said. Here's what got her cancelled. She said Jews were beat. This is back in the 2016 election, right?
No. It was
Trump.
between elections.
It was between
nothing
elections.
to do with elections.
Okay, Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbours, even by children, she said. Because history is edited, most people today don't realise that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbours hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? Her beautiful career, her massive career with Disney, she was one of the stars of The Mandalorian, was taken away from her. She was sacked for saying that.
Yeah.
And I mean, just devastating. And what's really interesting about that, and Phelim,
Yes.
can you find it there? Because my
Yes.
screen's gone funny here.
Yes.
But basically, what's really interesting about that is a co-star of hers in The Mandalorian, Pedro, what's his name, Phelim?
Pascal.
Pedro Pascal. What did Pedro say, Phelim?
Yeah. So he compared Trump supporters to Nazis, right? Now,
In a November post, which he subsequently
he actually
deleted.
called. It's deleted now. He compared. So she basically talked about the atmosphere of society and saying, please don't encourage people to hate their political opponents, right? And she didn't say who. She's saying that on both sides. Gina said on both. You can interpret that on both sides. Don't hate your political opponents. He went and described, I suppose, his political opponents, Trump supporters, who make up probably most of his audience, Nazis, and was not fired. Gina was fired. Now, Gina is now suing Disney, and she's been backed by Elon Musk's financial strength.
Yes.
I think Disney are very worried, and they should be. And we wish Gina all the best.
Oh, we wish Gina all the very,
and we will
very
be
best.
covering that court case,
Yes.
let me tell you.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So-
I think it'll never get into a courtroom because I think they'd be very, very foolish to get
Yes.
called out and have all these tweets put up against each other and asked, why is it that some people can speak freely and some people cannot? And some
Imagine-
people are silenced and everything taken away from her. Horrible.
Imagine the head of Disney being called in there to give evidence.
Nice.
So anyway, look, we want to do a little bit on journalism and how the world is changing and how it's not. I mean, obviously, after the election, it's been very interesting. Some outlets are realizing that they need to change. Others are just doubling down. The editor of the Guardian newspaper
So the Guardian newspaper editor offered journalists counselling to deal with the trauma they'd experienced after the election.
after Trump's victory.
After Trump's victory. And just to remember and to remind everyone, and I think this is incredibly important, these are the same journalists, by the way, who would be expected the next day, tomorrow, any day of the week, by the way, and who should want any day of the week to be asked to go out and report on the worst possible atrocity, to report on an earthquake where there'd be dead bodies all
Yes.
over the place, a flooding
To go
situation.
to Gaza,
to
to go to
Gaza,
Israel.
go to a terrorism situation, going into a war zone. And by the way, that's what journalism, you'll remember, Phelim, a very funny story one time where I was covering a story in Indonesia, and I remember ending up quite often would end up in these kind of places with a lot of other journalists. And there was a journalist at a table one night, a very, very senior journalist
That's
from a
correct.
very big outlet. who had been up covering the
Tsunami,
which was what was that called again? In
Aceh.
Aceh, the Aceh that had killed thousands of people. And he talked about being, where somewhere, and I think he was shaving or something, and he was looking out, and basically the dead bodies, were being washed down the river, and he could see this, and and he talked, and he started to do this whole thing about how upset, how traumatic it was, how upset he was. And I just said, and I was young and very new to journalism and so grateful and so shiny-nosed about getting this opportunity to cover a story in Indonesia at the time, that I said, retire. Go and become a librarian.
Maybe you should do something else.
Maybe you should do something else, by the way. Because I said, there are thousands of people who would love the opportunity to do that story, to be there, and they wouldn't be whinging about.
Oh, you didn't. No, you didn't.
I didn't quite say that, right?
No.
I didn't. No, my point was.
Yeah, that was your point.
My point was, what are you whinging about? Because basically, loads of people. Now, the minute I said it, though, I said to him, loads of people would love to do that. You should maybe do something else.
Yes.
He shut up very, very fast.
And withdrew, right?
And
withdrew the thing. But, so, I mean, look, there's nothing worse than journalists telling war stories, right? I mean, well, actually, it's
come on.
It's quite like
we love it.
We love it. But we went up to cover Standing Rock and were kidnapped by a bunch of friggin' Neanderthals. And held hostage in our car as they shook the car and tried to turn it over.
I wasn't there. Magda and Phelan were there.
And you can. Well, let's play a little clip from that.
It's open now.
Yeah, we're gonna have security.
Are you with the?
I'm with the press.
Hey! Let go! Let go of that, sir. Let go, sir. Let go of that. Let go.
I know. I understand.
Let go.
He's in the wrong place to ask that kind of stuff.
Let go of the microphone. Let go of the microphone. You gotta let go of the
Let's go to the
That's
press
my
box.
property. Let go.
Well, I guarantee you.
I spoke to Mike
This is not
yesterday.
gonna
I
be
was
filmed.
in
This is
here
not gonna be
interviewing him
filmed.
yesterday.
I have my own camera operator. Hey.
Sir, we want to leave.
This is
Can we-
unlawful.
you
This
are
is
an
unlawful
attorney.
imprisonment.
This is lawful to stop us here? To stop us here? We want to leave.
Hello, ma'am. Please, you need to send. There's more people
Is
coming
this
now.
legal? Is this legal?
Oh, there's a vehicle behind us and there's people in front of us. They won't allow us to move.
Can we just leave? We want to leave. We want to leave. We want to leave at this point. This is very scary. We want to just leave.
Still going, sir. We're going to take it off.
Is she sending
Please,
someone?
ma'am, you've got to send someone.
Like, I've been punched. Magda, I mean, at the end of Frack Nation, Magda's hand is bleeding. I've been banged. I've been knocked into. Just like. When I covered Northern Ireland, there was one time I thought I was going to be killed. I actually realised this is it. It's all over now.
It's all over now. But
and
that's the job.
It's the job now. It's not and counselling. Of course, we should have had counselling. I should have had counselling from Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
The counselling consisted of the
Get back out there.
No, go and get drunk. I'm honest. Like
they're the good old days.
Like go and get absolutely slammed.
He said that.
Well,
Somebody said
it was
that.
just assumed.
Okay.
And they would take you over and get you completely blutered.
Oh,
right?
that's very funny.
And then maybe the next day to get you blutered, and then you'd get over it, right? But now, of course, it was completely mad. You should never have done that, and it kind of probably extended it. And I don't want to go to personal details, but we have friends, Anne, who have been kidnapped in Iraq.
Yes. Yes.
And
when they were rescued and saved, basically, were asked by their editor, and this isn't a good old day. This is the good old days of journalism. We're asked by their editor, it's great that you're alive. That's marvelous. Could you give me 800 words?
We need 800 words by 9 p.m.
Can we have 800 words in the next 3 hours?
Yes.
Sort of thing. And that, by the way, not unfortunately, by the way, that's the job, and that's why
I mean, it's
I think we're very far away from that. So yeah, the Guardian now deciding to do this it's kind of extraordinary. So there's been an election, a completely, absolutely, people are, no one is disputing the result at all. Nobody on either side is disputing the result, and an editor of a newspaper is saying that the journalists, if they need any kind of counselling, that they're going to get it paid for. Moving on, Phelim, tell us about the Washington Post.
Well, the Washington Post is kind of tied in with the LA Times story as well. So, as you maybe you don't know this, but before the election, both of these newspapers, you see, they're both owned, interesting enough, by individual billionaires. The Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos of Amazon, and the LA Times is owned by, let me just,
I think it's
Patrick Soon-Shiong, right? So they both refused to back Kamala, endorse Kamala, and said, we need to do something. We are losing readers. And as Jeff Bezos said, people don't trust us anymore. We have trust ratings of 15% and 20% in journalism. That's an unsustainable model. So that's the opposite of the Guardian issue. So I, for some reason, I'm on the Washington Post email list, and they have this thing coming up on the 21st of November called the Global Women's Summit. And they've been sending me this email about the Global Women's Summit for months now. And, they're very proud. They've got Kerry Washington, who's an actor and executive producer, right? And if Kerry Washington, she's the one who's proud to have had her abortion. She's the first woman to reenact an abortion on network television.
Well, actually, there's a correction that needs to be made to that, by the way, because this is what she says. The first person to ever undergo an abortion procedure, except for, what they didn't do. They didn't show an abortion, So you're not brave. You didn't show anything. They didn't show anything. No. And guess what? If you did, I'll tell you one thing, there wouldn't be much abortion going on in this country, I'll tell you, if you had done that. It's quite interesting, actually. So she's a big liar, by the way.
And they played Silent Night over the abortion.
Yeah.
So proud to have had her. That was the kind of people they were having, and I was just going like, this is not a global women's summit. This is a global leftist women's summit.
However,
since the election, I got a new email the other day, and I just thought I'll click on it. Guess who they're inviting to their summit now?
Suddenly.
They're inviting Lara Trump.
And
Kellyanne Conway.
Amazing.
Yeah, so before they had, from the WNBA, Nanika Ogwumike and Shini Ogwumike, who are players and analysts, and they're African American. Now, no Caitlin Clark, and that was the kind of thing that they were doing, right? And they had Queefing Gallagher, a human rights lawyer, and Kerry Washington. But now they've got Lara Trump, Kellyanne Conway, a couple of Republican congresswomen. And now, of course, to balance it, they invited Nancy Pelosi and all that. So they're making it look like,
I still think if you were to add up the numbers,
I
think if you were to add up the numbers, I think you'd have 80 or 90% are still progressives.
But the idea that you would welcome someone with the name Trump and Kellyanne Conway at a global women's summit, it was unthinkable before the election. Unthinkable. And the LA Times has done the unthinkable too. The LA Times, and another aspect of these newspapers is, and I'll talk about this, I don't want to go on, I'm not sure people are that interested in the internal workings of these organizations, but the newspapers, the journalists were spending an inordinate amount of time trying to destroy their newspaper rather than print it. Like they did it, the Washington Post has a new editor, Will Lewis. The journalists got together and did a 3,500 word piece on his ethical failings. They did such a hatchet job on his new deputy that he had to resign. So Patrick Soon-Shiong of the LA Times, the owner, has just been fed up with it, and he's just fired his entire editorial board and gone on Fox News and saying they want a more balanced journalistic team and editorial board. So I have decided I am going to apply to be on the editorial board of the LA Times.
I think it's going to be a very interesting experiment. So we're going to have Phelim McAleer applying for this job, and we're going to keep you up to date on how this application goes.
Yes.
So Phelim McAleer, who, by the way, in the past has worked not only for the Financial Times as the Romania and Bulgaria correspondent for many years, he also worked prior to that for The Economist. He at the same time for The Economist. He also worked for the UK Sunday Times,
yes,
and for the Irish News during a war in Northern Ireland, yes, known as the Troubles. So You have a very interesting pedigree, Phelim. You've got
York
long years of experience.
New York Times bestselling author.
And New York Times bestselling author with your wife.
Yes.
Hello. But yes, I think this will be a very interesting thing. We will keep you up to date on Phelim's application and how it goes.
Yes. So for those who believe diversity is our strength and all cultures are equal, let's have a listen.
Iraq is on the verge of a shocking legal change that could lower the legal marriage age from 18 to just 9 years old.
Oh my God. I mean, this is incredible news, this idea that you would have the age of consent lowered to 9. This, by the way, should be a massive news story. You know, instead of talking about pronouns, you know, and worrying about pronouns and people being misgendered, like this is the story that everybody should be focused on.
Women's rights.
Yeah. Where are the women's rights organizations? What does the UN mean, by the way? How can the UN have countries sitting down together talking about anything other than this and treating this country like as though like it's an equal member of anything, of any organization.
The civilized nations of the world.
Since 1959, Iraq's personal status law has set the minimum marriage age at 18, offering protection for families
like every other
across
country.
Different religions. The proposed amendment, driven by a Shia Muslim majority in parliament, would lower the marriage age to 9 based on certain interpretations of the Islamic law.
Of course, certain interpretations of Islamic law. Didn't Muhammad, peace be upon him, marry a 9-year-old?
I believe he did marry a 9-year-old, and that's where this is all coming from. But I just think this is an incredible piece of news, and should be the front page news story everywhere. But certainly should be the thing that all women's rights organisations should be unanimous about.
Pack away your pussy hat and get on a plane to Iraq.
Talking of which,
talking of women's rights.
Talking of women's rights.
We're at this Kamala Harris Fashion Week party.
God.
And look how dystopian this is. Wait for it.
Dystopian.
Abortion rights are hard.
Abortion rights are hot.
I just can't understand why she didn't win.
Isn't it amazing? How did she not win with that kind of marketing?
Yes.
Let's go on.
This game. With the laws or whatever. Look. Hotties for Harris.
Hooters for Harris.
There's this game called Fight for Repro Rights.
A game.
There's an abortion access ski ball.
An abortion access ski ball, whatever. Yeah, some kind of
game.
Yeah.
Oh. I mean, as I say, like, how did she lose with that marketing? And I mean, because everyone wants to play games celebrating abortion, don't they?
Yeah, and it's the only thing that women care about, actually. There's nothing else that women care about except for destroying their own children.
Yes, or their own grandchildren.
Yeah.
A surprising amount do, by the way.
Yeah.
There is a couch for JD Vance.
This is the most important. You know, we talk about misinformation and disinformation. So this is a rumor spread on the internet. Somebody faked up a page from JD Vance's autobiography that he admitted to having sex with a couch, right?
Oh.
And they started joking about it in Kamala Harris' speeches and Waltz's speeches. And no media organization called them out for disinformation. And now at a Kamala Harris event, they're having this couch with JD Vance. I mean,
and you wonder why you lost. And you wonder why you lost.
And the media never called them out on it. And the media wonders why no one's watching them anymore. Talking of which,
hyperbole and personal attacks will not work. My hair on fire doesn't work. We've all seen that.
This is basically them realizing that their numbers are in
the tank, or in the toilet. Totally.
Did you see? I think that the numbers have fallen below 50% of the previous.
Previous low.
I think it's only tens of thousands of the people that advertisers want. At the weekend, the total audience of some of these shows
is 25,000.
25,000. So this is them going, please let us back into Trump world where people actually, please.
Yes, we'll be good.
What also does not work is threatening political opponents with arrest, harassment, and even jail.
You think? I mean, also what does not work is bad journalism, by the way. You could always just try doing journalism. How about that?
You can always try just looking in the mirror and trying to work out what happened.
That is a failed path. Recent history has proven that impeachments and trials turn those on trial into political martyrs and only make them...
No, they don't, actually. fake trials, fake charges that no person has ever been charged with before in the history of jurisprudence. Don't
and
work.
that nobody could explain to
and
you.
Nobody
if you
could. If I went out now onto the streets of Santa Monica and asked because loads of lawyers there, I bet none of them could explain to me what Trump was convicted of and his 39 million felonies or whatever it is.
The more popular with the American people. Just
only if the charges are fake.
Ask Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. We know this will be a consequential presidency. The question is whether it will be constructive.
And whether you'll have any part in it.
But suddenly, you know, she's actually opening the door for the potential that it might be constructive. This is a segue.
Yeah, so they went down to visit Donald Trump at the weekend.
They begged if they could go down and see Donald Trump. Donald Trump was very funny because he put that out on a tweet. He actually said, you know, he didn't invite them down there. No, they begged
like a dog, isn't it?
Yeah. Some version like that. But he said it was very nice because he spoke. Anyway, go on.
Do you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of a hostage video that they're kind of the messages they're forced to say. I half expecting them to hold up a newspaper of
saying, "Help me,
yeah, or
save me."
This is today. We're proof of life.
It will take a new approach from all sides.
It's called
parties.
Journalism.
And a leader who can bring them together, and only time will tell if Donald Trump is that
and journalists.
leader.
What about you? Yeah, what about your part in all of this?
By the way, it won't take a fresh approach from our side.
As for us, we also let him know that we will continue to speak truth to power and push back hard when called for.
You never spoke truth to power. You thought you were buttressing the powerful, the establishment. You were fighting down all the time. You were punching down to the working class that you hate, that you have nothing but.
And when did you bring
for.
the truth to power? When did you do that with Obama? When did you do that? Sorry, when did you do that with Obama? When did you do that with Harris? When did you do that with Biden?
Like for example, when Trump criticized Liz Cheney for being a warmonger and said if she was serving in the front line, she wouldn't be as fond of war. Why did you people call that a threat to Liz Cheney? It's actually quite a leftist comment to make.
Yeah.
Anti-war. It's like a war poet thing a war poet would say.
You never heard of Jane Fonda?
No. Yeah. Go ahead.
As we have with all presidents.
No, you haven't. No, you haven't.
No, you haven't. As we have with all.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
I think Joe might come in now. Look at poor Joe. He's in a hostage video. Blink 3 times.
Blink if
Joe.
you're okay there, Joe.
If you're okay, give us Morse code. Where's the location? Why is Mika holding a gun to you?
Don't be mistaken. We're not here to defend or normalize Donald Trump. We're here to report on him and to hopefully provide you insights that are going to better equip all of us.
No, you're not normalizing Donald Trump because that was done at the last election by 70 million, 5 million people.
Yeah, we didn't need you, Joe
deeply
Scarborough.
Unsettling times.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's wrong to gloat, but it's nice.
But it's nice too. Yeah, it's
nice.
Very nice too.
We have a very, 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 very special guest next week. You won't want to miss it. It's a special Thanksgiving guest, and we're very thankful that this guest is coming on.
Yes. We won't even be here. We won't be in Los Angeles. We'll be traveling to meet this very special person.
And he'll have the inside scoop on Hollywood and the entertainment industry, and not what you think. This is going to be a very special guest. You won't want to miss.
It's our Thanksgiving episode, and so do not miss it. It's going to be very special, and best of luck for with shopping. By the way, for your turkey. And
you do not deliberately to annoy me.
I have to say that my husband has very strong feelings about both Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that turkey should be served. And what has happened recently, and I know we're all friends here, so I feel like when traumatic things happen in our lives, we should share them with you. So we have recently discovered that where we're going to be spending Christmas with our lovely family members, they have announced that they are not going to cook a turkey, that they're going to do something else special. My husband thinks nothing is special unless you have turkey at Christmas.
Turkey and ham.
Turkey and ham, and this has caused
stuffing.
This has caused difficulty. I didn't realize how serious this was until a number of years ago when I innocently suggested, wouldn't it be lovely just to have fish? Which, of course, is what I always want to eat. But, my husband feels very strongly about that. So anyway...
It for this that the man of 1916 died?
Something like that. So anyway, basically, that's enough of us from this week. We're wishing you very well, by the way, with all of your shopping for Thanksgiving. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
With our special guest.